Sue Moroney.
Oh, Mr Speaker, I thought there was a theme developing with the National Party speeches. It was all about how great the economies were going in their regions. And then Tim McIndoe got up and couldn't speak about the economy in the Waikato because it's going down the tubes under this government. Shameful that he spent most of his speech talking about the Queen. Don't look at the Waikato economy going down the tubes, look at the Queen. Yeah, look over there, look at the flag, oh, look at the Queen. Because the truth is that in the Waikato we are facing the perfect storm. We are facing the perfect storm. A point of order.
Order.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. It's very difficult when the member's getting so angry about his lack of attention to the Waikato economy.
The member will resume his seat. I have just drawn the member into line. I now invite the member to get on with her speech rather than refer to the ruling which I've just made, even if I made it from my seat.
Well, Mr Speaker, I'm disappointed that the member for Hamilton West didn't talk about the Waikato economy, because it is the perfect storm and his government ought to do something about it. Because at the moment we've got plummeting dairy milk prices, which is affecting our region, and at the same time escalating house prices, because that government has failed to fix the housing crisis in Auckland, and it's marching on down over the hill, over the Bombays and straight down to Hamilton, affecting house prices, increasing rents, and meaning that MPs like myself and Tim McIndoe have got hordes of people coming into our offices trying to find decent places to live, find places to live, and that's what's happening in the Waikato. But, Mr Speaker, I do want to talk about a hopeful future for this country, because what we do need is we need a government with a decent moral compass, one that's in touch with the people who are there to represent. And who demonstrated it this week? Andrew Little demonstrated that in truckloads. In truckloads. He led the fight to get the refugee quota lifted, the emergency measures in place. Since April, he has been calling for the refugee quota to be lifted. He didn't have to wait to see the dreadful photos. He didn't have to wait for Crosby Textor to tell him to start moving. He didn't have to wait to see public opinion start changing. He knew since April that that was the right thing to do, because we could see the humanitarian crisis just revving up over in Europe and the Middle East and those parts of the world. And what we need is a sort of leadership that Andrew Little demonstrated, the ability to say that that is the sort of thing that New Zealand can help with and should help with, and he was on the front foot of that issue. John Key was, I don't know what he was doing, but he certainly wasn't listening to the New Zealand public on this. It took him weeks to catch up, and that's not the sort of, he was completely at sea with it. That's not the sort of leadership that we need, because John Key's taking his instructions from Crosby Textor, and they got it wrong. They got it wrong. Mr Speaker. What?
I think the member's been here long enough to know that she cannot say that members are receiving instructions from outside parties. She will not say that. In fact, she'll withdraw.
You would like me to withdraw?
I would.
Okay, I withdraw. What I will say is he takes his advice from Crosby Textor. That's where he takes his advice from. He ought to be taking his advice from the New Zealand people, because the New Zealand people knew what the right thing was to do, and Andrew Little got that right as well. Mr Speaker, 100 years ago, the New Zealand Labour Party was formed. It was formed on the back of a dispute where miners went on strike over crib time. Crib time is what they used to call getting a tea break. That's what miners were on strike about 100 years ago, and 100 years later we have that government taking away ordinary workers' right to having a tea break. Some things never change. The National Party back to its old tricks, and the Labour Party is the one with the answers and the positive vision about what working life ought to look like. Next week, we'll be talking about 26 weeks paid parental leave, another area that the government is hopelessly out of touch with the New Zealand public on, because they don't understand and they have no interest in knowing the pressures on New Zealand families. It's the Labour Party who understands the pressures that are on New Zealand families, and we will fight. And yes, we're determined, and we're going to continue to fight to get that right. Because while the National Party just takes a laissez-faire approach to it and tries to deal with the politics of it, they will continuously get this wrong, because it's not about politics. It is actually about doing the right thing. Doing the right thing, like Andrew Little had the instinct about, like the Labour Party has the instinct about on making sure that every child gets the best start in life. It's clear that the best ideas are coming from this side of the House.
Todd Barclay.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd just like